Hello and welcome back to Manchester Electric. There's Fran looking somewhat confused, and here's Rich. How are you, bud? Okay?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
Just looked very confused. There was obviously some technical issue causing you some headache there.
It just wasn't working. Yeah, it was just a bit weird. It just said we didn't have enough storage, which we quite clearly do. Here we are.
Well, maybe you need to buy the older, whatever it's called in the sky, the cloud. That's the word we're looking for, the cloud. Obviously, we didn't catch up last week. Feels like a million years ago. And of course, there's been lots of interesting ins and outs and ups and downs and round and rounds, including, of course, new managerial incomings at Spurs. Obviously, the league table has taken a little bit more of a shape. And of course, the big North London win for Arsenal kind of calmed some of their nerves. So, just really quickly, in terms of where you see the state of play, let's start at the top. You still got Arsenal firm favourites, although Man City may well be your choice. Who are you going for?
No, I think I'm still siding with Arsenal at the minute. It's obviously getting closer, and Arsenal had a mini wobble, didn't they? But when I just look at that squad, I just can't see how they don't just grind out the results that they need. And they said Man City, yes, they've on a good run of form, but they have had a wobble, and they do seem to be a little bit inconsistent. It's not the City of old. So for me, I'm still with Arsenal, but wouldn't surprise me in the next couple of weeks to see those points gap get closer.
Yeah, it's a very interesting pick. For me, that the PR around both teams needs to be looked at in the sense that everybody kind of went, it's in Man City's hands now. They win their games, they've won the league. Well, that's exactly the same point of view for Arsenal because they play Man City. So actually, I think everybody just needs to understand that will be, thank God, a massive, massive game. Having said that, this weekend's an interesting piece, right? I think we're all going to say that Man City should get over the line against Leeds. However, Arsenal playing Chelsea is another massive fixture that you could see tripping Arsenal up. You could see that being a draw. I think Arsenal are much better than Chelsea currently, but you could see it being a draw. So actually, even along that way, there's going to be many ups and downs before the big game. But that win at Tottenham last week for Arsenal was a much needed in the terms of two draws off the back of some maybe not great performances as well. But also in terms of the confidence that gives them going on, that should hopefully give them the injection in the arm they needed to kind of feel like they've still got it in their hands rather than the other way around.
Yeah, do you know when I look at the league as well, at the beginning of the season, there was 3 or 4 teams that if you were playing them, you're almost guaranteed a win. Even at the minute, like Wolves aren't rolling over like they used to. Burnley have picked up a win, a few draws in their past 6-7 games. Like there isn't that many teams now that you look at who are on horrendous form, and you go, "Oh, I don't really see them not winning." Like most teams are putting up a fight now, so I think it is going to be interesting, regardless sort of who you're playing now. So like I said, there isn't that many easy teams to play and just guarantee 3 points. Like even when you're looking to say Arsenal, Chelsea, Leeds, Man City, they're both tough games. Leeds at home is a tough game for any team. With the pace that they've got and the way that they counter, like they can hurt Man City. So both of those games definitely aren't gimmies. And Chelsea are on good form, but they're not the Chelsea of old. So it's going to be an interesting game where you can definitely see some points dropped.
Yeah, you could argue that Arsenal have just played one of only 2 teams that are a give me in Tottenham at the moment. That was always going to be an away win. There was no grey area on that whatsoever. So maybe it's the wrong game to judge where Arsenal are at because actually they are far, far superior than Tottenham as everything in the game shows. So we move on to the relegation battle. Obviously, that Tottenham are now firmly in the mix. In most people, I think, will agree that the other team to go down is one of 3, i.e. West Ham, Nottingham Forest or Tottenham Hotspur. Where do you see the team currently being at most at risk of joining Burnley and Wolves? Burnley, sorry.
Again, I find this really difficult. If you'd have probably asked me a couple of weeks ago, I'd have said Forest. But the more games that go by, Spurs do look like they are dropping like a stone. But even just the reaction to the new manager, I don't know if you've seen the video going around of Van de Ven just ignoring him. He's turning to get up and he just stands still. So I don't know whether it's been put on social media just to wind people up or whether he genuinely was ignoring him. That's the way it looked. But Spurs do seem to be the team that have fallen off a cliff and have to turn it around quickly. They've got to put some points on the board quickly. So, because to me, the one that don't look the most in danger is West Ham, which is strange because they're 2 and 4 points behind the other 2. But to me, West Ham seem the most likely to stay up.
they have definitely made it interesting, haven't they? Their upturn, ironically, started with the last-minute winner against Tottenham. Has definitely seen them come right back into it. I just felt that actually there was a moment that was relatively small in the grand scheme of things, but massive in the grand scheme of things, and it was that Sesko equaliser for Manchester United. I felt like it kind of popped that West Ham were doing a phenomenal one. They're like, literally almost last kick of the game, right? If they beat Manchester United based on the run that they were on, I think that changes everything. But the fact that that game ended up as a draw felt like a defeat. And then they go and draw the following game as well. I think, they've got Liverpool at the weekend. Tottenham have got Fulham. If Tottenham could beat Fulham, not easy to do in the last 5-6 years for Spurs, but if they did, and Liverpool beat West Ham, which I'm sure we'll probably all assume that they do, that actually makes it 8 points, I think, off the top of my head, or certainly 7 points. I can't 7 points with a massive goal difference as well, which technically is 8 points. That might be the turning point in actually whether West Ham are still able to get themselves out of it.
Yeah, it could well be. I suppose it depends on your outlook, and full well what the manager there will be doing. He'll be saying, look, it's another point gained. Yes, you can look at it as 2 points, but when you're in that sort of predicament, and you look at Manchester United's form, you have to look at that as a positive, don't you? But I completely get where you're going. It's like a loss, isn't it, when you're so close to 3 points?
You could just see it in their faces. Like, again, it's about the psychology of how things are pitched, and having watched that process and watching the game, like the West Ham stadium felt like a defeat. You could see. Whereas, again, on the flip side, if Manchester United have been 1-0 up and then West Ham score a last-minute equaliser, they're on the up, aren't they? It's a point that they got out of nowhere. They pulled it. Like, it just felt like that they were anticipating 3 points. They felt they had 3 points to lose 2 of them. And again, stick 2 points on West Ham now, and that makes it very scary down the bottom for Nottingham Forest and Tottenham. It was a big swing. It felt like doesn't feel like a big moment in the grand scheme of things, but at that time, it was. You could see it in their faces. It was a massive, massive swing.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if you've seen this morning. I think it's IFAB is how we abbreviate them. Are looking at new rules, which we always love. We need more rules. Yeah, we need
more rule changes.
Yeah, we need more rules. The latest ones to combat slow play is that you will have 5 seconds to take a goal kick and 5 seconds to take a throw on. Discuss.
I saw another suggestion, I'm sure it's from Mark Clattenburg, where he was on about sort of time wasting. And to me, there's quite an easy solution. If there's a device that you put on your wrist and it counts how many seconds, just add the time on at the end. Like, surely that's a solution instead of pissing around with the rules. I'm not being funny, Rich. I don't know about you, but I have completely lost the love of football. So when we're doing this pod, I've got to admit, I'm really struggling with it. The interest in the game is completely on the wane for me. It's not entertainment anymore. You hear about these tweaks to the rules and just everything about it. Football is for the fans, and it just isn't at the minute. It's just being completely mashed. And I said, my love for the game is dwindling down with PSR, with finances, and it's just not football.
Like, I feel like I've been quite lucky this week in the sense that I caught the Sheffield Derby on Sunday, which was a great game of great spectacle, a great, kind of blood and thunder game. Obviously ended in defeat for Sheffield Wednesday, which it resulted in relegation. And I thought if you was clever with your viewing of the Champions League during the week, there was some games. So like the Atalanta Dortmund game was full of excitement and entertainment. So I feel like I've watched some good football. But I do worry that as we've said many times on here, the Premier League is starting to eat itself. For me, to take a goal kick in 5 seconds, does that start from when you put the ball on the floor or from when the ball goes out? If the ball goes out, how do you then drop this down the level? So I always worry about what does it mean for the rest of football, where you haven't got 75 cameras, where you haven't got 75 footballs. So for example, where we play, albeit in a stadium, if it goes past the goal, it ends up in bushes. It takes you 2 minutes to find the ball out of the bushes.
Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like I said, and like you said, where does that end? Where does it? If the ball hits the side netting and rolls to the corner flag, has the goalkeeper got to run for that? What about if the ball boy holds on to it for 5 seconds? Whose fault's that? And again, they just go, there's common sense, but then that's not a rule. Common sense isn't a rule you can't live by. Just leave it alone. Just add the time on at the end.
Do you know the one? And I've said this to a few people now. The one that I don't think ever gets added on by the way. And by the way, I don't think that the time added on is ever correct. It's never right. Like if there's a 5-minute VAR, which again is you could limit that to being 90 seconds VAR and then move on, right? That's a really easy way of moving the game forward, just for a different idea. If you can't decide in 90 seconds, go with what the referee decided in the first place. It's not that obvious. That'd be the first point. The second point, this new rule where they let game play on, and then when it goes dead, they put the flag up. Do you get that? Do you get that time back? Because essentially you're offside from the point of being offside. So if the game goes on for another 10, 15, 20 seconds, actually that's a waste of time because the game, you know, that the players stop. So why are we, like, I just, you know, for me, the one thing you could do with immediate effects is if there was a way of stopping players rolling about and holding their head, Arsenal doing it famously against Wolves, which obviously didn't benefit them in the end, but, you know, and then coming off of a concussion substitution, but was still able to play the next game. Like if we could stop players rolling around looking like they're being shot from the stands all the time, that would be all we need to fix. That's the one thing that we need to fix alongside VAR, and then I think we're in a good spot.
Like, do you know when I'm sure it was the World Cup or the Euros?
Yeah, loads of time. Loads of time. Yeah.
They ended up with 10, 15 minutes added on, and everyone was going, where's this from? But I don't think nobody complained about it because they understood what it was. And therefore, actually, I think you did start to see players stop rolling around because they knew that 10, 15 minutes was going to be added on. So the solution is staring them in the face. What I haven't seen, though, is, do you know, like sometimes you see big debates on a decision, like as an example, the Juve one where Lloyd Kelly.
Not sending off.
It wasn't a sending off, but there was debate about that, wasn't there? And then if someone would have come out with a suggestion to stop that, I could have understood. Nobody's talking about time wasting. You know, like the ball going out and goal is taking too long to go and pick it up. Nobody's talking about it. They're fixing something that's not a problem. Like what they need to do is ensure that their referees are up to standard and the VAR's up to standard, and to stop taking 10 minutes to make a decision, because that's what they need to fix, not time wasting and all these other rules, you know, adding 6 teams to a championship playoff and all that rubbish. Just get on making the officials better. That's what they need to do.
Don't disagree, mate. And we didn't do it because we weren't on air last week, but obviously there was the FA Cup debacle where it proved what a shambles the referees were without VAR. Of course, those that believe VAR is the way forward would evidence or argue that the VAR shows how good it is. But for me, it was how bad the refereeing was without the VAR, particularly the Aston Villa Newcastle game, which was a complete shambles.
I have an opinion on that, though. I don't believe it's how bad the refereeings are. I believe it's how much that they've relied on VAR, and therefore their decisions, now they haven't been used to making decisions for themselves.
Correct.
So it's almost come as a surprise to them. VAR hasn't resolved any of these issues. It's caused the referees now to be poor.
Well, what they should have done is they should have, if there's no VAR, they should have put referees in the games that don't have VAR. So championship referees should have got the FA Cup games as a little bit of a, you know, let's see what you can do, because they're used to refereeing without VAR. To have a VAR refereeing a game without VAR doesn't feel like it makes sense to me anymore. But that's, again, maybe that's just too obvious and too easy to think about. Maybe I'm making this all far too easy for those powers that be that are obviously all geniuses. We have got another busy, action-packed, of course, 10 matches to get through. I don't know what we're looking like in terms of our numbers and where we're at, and I've got to be honest with you, I'm probably a little bit behind schedule in terms of what I see as being options. But it all starts tonight. Wolverhampton Wanderers, so Friday night football. Wolverhampton Wanderers, 8 p.m. kickoff against Aston Villa. Probably 4 weeks ago, we go very comfortable away win, right? Very easy away win. But like you said a minute ago, Wolverhampton Wanderers have picked up. Aston Villa have fallen off. Can you see this being a hurdle? Again, bit of a local derby, right? For those that are there, obviously, you know, they'll say this is a Midlands derby. This is a massive game. Can you see Wolves picking something up in this game at all, or is this a comfortable away win for you?
No, I don't think it's a comfortable away win at all. I've got it down as Wolves 1, Villa 2, but I did initially write down 1-1. I've only then changed it because I just went, probability-wise, Villa will sneak it. But my gut feel was 1-1. And I think that's because, obviously, Wolves have picked up and a far, far better team than what they were. I don't think the sort of points and everything about them suggest that, though. The stats, sort of the core stats behind it. But the eye test, they are a much better side. They're scoring a few more goals, and defensively, they're a lot more sound. So I think, you know, he's doing a good job with what he's given there, Rob Edwards, but they're just not picking up the points, which is why I've sort of gone for Villa. But what worries me with Villa is, I think their firepower, I think Ollie Watkins is still out injured. they are just struggling with a few injuries at the minute around the team. So that's why a month ago I would have gone 3-0 Villa. Really, I just think it's a lot more tighter game when you take that into consideration of injuries and Wolves being better.
Yeah, the midfield actually for me is the problem for Villa. In McGinn, Kamara are both out. Like you say, kind of up top, Ollie Watkins, is he 100% fit? What does he look like? Tammy Abrahams is for me not quite elite, but obviously is a handful. So I've actually gone Wolves to Villa 2. I can see this being a real old school sort of throwback, bit of blood and thunder. Maybe sort of over 4 yellow cards, that kind of thing, lots of corners, lots of free kicks, and hopefully a little bit of excitement as well. But I think this is absolutely the sort of game that Wolverhampton Wanderers will cherish and kind of get behind, because ultimately, they didn't have a great turnout from a fan point of view for Arsenal, albeit on a Monday. I think it was midweek, it was Wednesday night, wasn't it, or Thursday night maybe even. Whereas I see the fans coming back to this game big time and really getting behind the team now that they're giving them something to cheer and support whilst they enjoy their last kind of 10, 12 fixtures in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. And said, I don't know what sort of the Wolves fans' feelings are. Not being a Wolves fan, I've seen a few comments around, Edwards isn't performing, but they're the worst squad in the league by a country mile. So I think he's doing a pretty decent job with what he's got, and he's quite clearly prepping for the Championship, isn't he? Whether or not the youngsters coming through, whether they'll be sold to satisfy PSR, again, another joke of a rule in there. I don't know, but I think he's doing a decent job with what he's got.
I think what he keeps making the mistake of doing is calling the fans out, and they don't seem to be enjoying that. Quite rightly so, but who wants to be told that they need to get behind the team? I think it's a difficult piece. Like, he does class himself as a supporter, so maybe he feels that buys him some credit. But for me, he's just upsetting I think he's done, actually, from a football point of view, I think he's done a very solid job. But I just think the PR piece around the way he's communicated with the fans and telling them that they're not enough, I just think that he's probably peed more of them off than he needed to. But, if they've got a draw against Aston Villa, a draw against Arsenal, there'd be two very good results that would show that I think Wolves, probably, of whoever goes down, have got actually one of the better chances maybe coming straight back up again, because their team is not going to be savaged by the higher echelons of the Premier League. They'll lose a couple of players, obviously, but they've got a good chance of keeping quite a few of them, I would suggest.
Yeah, I suppose it's just probably those couple of youngsters. It's Mane, isn't it? He's the one who does look like he is top draw. Whether or not they get pillaged, I don't know. So when you look at, say, for me, if I was to pick, say, the current bottom three, you'd probably imagine Burnley might be the team to win it again and go for it, because generally they seem to go down, keep the players, come back up. They don't really seem to have that star quality, whereas, say, West Ham, Forest or Spurs, they will definitely have individuals taken from them, won't they?
Yeah. I think they think they would. Whether they actually do or not, I don't know. But I guess time will tell. Okay, so you're going for a 2-1 Aston Villa win, yeah?
Yes.
I'm going for 2-2. Okay. Bournemouth are the early kickoff, which is really harsh from the Sunderland supporters. Obviously, getting from Sunderland to Bournemouth for a 12:30 kickoff, but that's what it is at the Vitality Stadium. I think that's off the top of my head. Bournemouth had a bit of a resurgence. Sunderland have fallen off a bit of a cliff. Home win?
Yeah, I've gone pretty comfortable 2-0, and I couldn't quite believe the odds at the bookies. They're odds on, which I was thinking. I was personally even looking at putting Bournemouth as a banker, which I know is a bit dodgy, but I wasn't expecting odds on. So because of that, I've steered clear of it. But yeah, I think they'd be a good price for a home win. Sunderland have been pretty poor of late, and Bournemouth, like I said, along with sort of Manchester United and City, are the form team in the league, which is remarkable considering they were the most out of form team probably 6 weeks ago. I think the introduction of Ryan to replace Semenya, though, has been massive for them. He looks an absolute superstar already. Yeah. I think we're both going to say the same thing. He won't be there long. Probably another season, if that. He won't be there long. He looks a superstar.
Yeah, what a signing. And again, if I was at some of those teams down the bottom of the league, or even at the top of the league looking to get in the Champions League, you're thinking you missed out on one there. Not a crazy number they paid. I think it's about the £30 million mark, which, I guess is a bit of a gamble, but he has looked like an absolute doozy, isn't he? Phenomenal football player. And already straight away went straight into my fantasy team, because he's just picking up points every week. Every time he's on the ball, he looks like something's going to happen. So very, very exciting. And you're right, Bournemouth were almost, I think it was Charlie Austin, wasn't it, a footballer that would score for 6 games, 8 goals in 6 games, and wouldn't score for 10 games, then would score 12 goals in 7 games. Yeah, and it feels like Bournemouth have done that this season, where they've either been absolutely unstoppable for a period of time, or can't win for toffee. And they're in that moment. The trouble you have with a team like that is you never know when that's going to switch back the other way. But I, like you, don't think it'll be this weekend. I think that Bournemouth will win this game 2-1. And it keeps them right bang in that European conversation. And if they're going to keep on players like Ryan and the like, they need to be in Europe, don't they? Because players will stay for that. So, if Bournemouth could do that, and again, they're above, let's not forget, they're above Newcastle. They're above, obviously, Tottenham, Nottingham Forest, teams that you wouldn't have thought them being above. Bournemouth are doing a fantastic job. And again, this summer, maybe the key will be, can they keep hold of the manager? Because he's done it again with all those. But we spoke about Brentford losing a bunch of players in the summer. Bournemouth lost arguably a better group of players themselves.
Yeah, and they've just gone quietly about their business again, haven't they? They said, I don't think we can praise their recruitment team enough. They do just seem to go out and get players for good value as well. I said, Ryan at 30 million, you can look at it and go, it's a lot of money for Bournemouth. They're more than going to double the money on him when they sell him, let me tell you that. So, yeah, just a tremendously well-run club.
Yeah, completely agree. So, good stuff. Okay, we head to Turf Moor, Burnley, in the Battle of the Bees. Not as in, I meant as in bees, as in the letter B, not bees, which is obviously Brentford's nickname. Host Brentford. If I'm a Brentford fan or part of the Brentford sort of setup, I'm looking at this thinking, this is a real chance to stamp our authority on that European place. I'm thinking, hold on a minute, we've had some great results. This is a potential banana skin, but we can go and turn Burnley over, or coming back off the back of a, relatively comfortable win for Brighton against them last week. This could be the perfect fixture for Brentford to get back on track, couldn't it?
It could. I mean, you just mentioned the Brighton result. I had that down as a Brentford win, so I was surprised that they lost there, because Brighton looked to be in with a shout going down as well. So that's a huge win for them. So I was surprised to see Brentford lose that game. But yeah, they've got to look at this as a massive opportunity, haven't they? So Burnley, again, have picked up, 1 win in 7. Doesn't sound great, but from where they were, they've been doing all right. I mean, for me, I've gone Burnley 0, Brentford 2. I just think they will have too much and beat Burnley. But it wouldn't surprise me if it was 0-0, 1-1.
Yeah, I suppose you could carry every score like that, couldn't you, these days, because the league has been so up and down and round and round. But yeah, I've gone Burnley 1, Brentford 2. I've actually been quite impressed with what Burnley are doing recently. I think they've definitely looked like a better team. It looks like they've got their head around the Premier League. It's not going to be enough to keep them up, but like you said, if they can keep those players, it wouldn't surprise me if they did bounce back as the league winners. That's what they tend to do. They tend to be far too good for the Championship and nowhere near good enough for the Premier League. But this is the game where you're going to get a sense of whether Brentford can kick on and go and be a European contender, or whether they're just going to have to settle. And I use that term very loosely, for mid-table for the rest of the season. And I'm sure at the start of the season, everybody would have taken it, but it feels like they've had their expectation sort of risen, doesn't it, by what they've done. And of course, now talking about Keith Andrews signing a new contract, which, for me, the right thing to do, keep him there. It's proven that actually managers that leave Brentford don't do what they do like they do at Brentford. So just keep him there, and actually that's a perfect marriage, isn't it? Now that for me is a solution. Keep him there.
And what it also does, I mean, I can't imagine he's going to be on an astronomical wage there. He's not going to be on sort of 100, 150 grand a week. It'll still be sensible. But tying him down, I think he's there till 2032 now that it's been done for. So tying him down, so if somebody does want him, they're going to have to pay a good amount to get him out of there. So they'll be compensated well. So again, sensible business.
Yeah, I think that works both ways, by the way. I don't think people are going to be looking to get manager out of Brentford, because you look at going right the way through the process. Uwe Rosler was doing bits when he was there. Mark Warburton was there doing bits, and then they leave. Dean Smith was also there. Dean Smith, that's a guy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thomas Frank. They've all come out of the club and done nothing in reality. And I use that word loosely. Of course, they've all gone on to manage, but not in terms of the success. So for me, if I was looking for a new manager, I would be leaving the Brentford manager well alone. And of course, actually, it's interesting in the Champions League, there's the Bodo Glimt manager that everyone's getting a little bit excited about. And I wonder whether he might be a similar situation where actually he works because of where it is and what they've got, rather than can that be replicated. But it'll be interesting what happens with him. But for me, I'd be leaving Keith Andrews there. And again, like you say, long-term contract, fantastic. And I'm really happy that they proved everybody wrong, including me. But big win at the weekend is needed for them to keep pushing for those European spots.
Yeah. Bodo Glimt manager is the most obvious Palace replacement, isn't he?
Thomas Frank, probably, I would suggest.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think a European team goes for the Bodo Glimt guy first, personally. But like I say, if he's got, without going down a rabbit hole, the other interesting thing about that is that he's actually openly come out and said that his mate who's in the army has come in and changed the mindset, which tells me actually that, maybe he's got limitations, because Bodo Glimt weren't this team last year. They're bringing the guy from the army that's taught them that they can win. And I think it's all interesting stuff. But for me, he's doing a great job. But is it because of where he's at and the security of knowing he hasn't got that pressure, in terms of Champions League? But they have played some great football and beat some good teams. Liverpool host West Ham. Liverpool at 3:00 kickoff on Saturday. That's not very often. We've already touched on West Ham's play. Liverpool have become a little bit kind of irrelevant, really, haven't they? That they're now fighting for a Champions League spot. I don't really know. Mo Salah's not doing what Mo Salah does. Cody Gakpo has, in my opinion, sort of fallen off a cliff. Chiesa, when he comes on, doesn't look like the goal threat. Ekitike doesn't really look like he's on form. I struggle to see goals, but I do still have them as winning this game, bizarrely.
I've got them as winning this game as 2-1, but I think I know it's a pretty obvious shout. I know exactly why in the past couple of games they haven't looked as threatening, and Ekitike hasn't. Is you take Florian Wirtz out of that team, and the creativity is just non-existent, especially as Szoboszlai is having to be played at right back. You look at the midfield, Curtis Jones. I was high. I don't know whether it was the commentary or somebody said to me, I think it was Jamie Carragher said, have a look at how many touches Curtis Jones has. And it was so true. He has 4 or 5 touches, and before you know it, every man is back behind the ball. Florian Wirtz has 1-2 touches, and the ball's gone. I don't think people realise how important he is to that Liverpool team, because, like you've mentioned with Salah, Salah's finished. He's finished now. He's done. There's no creativity coming through him. There's no threat. Cody Gakpo, I think, is performing to his level. I don't think he is particularly threatening. He's not really direct. All he's got is one sort of trick where he cuts back inside and has a shot, which teams are wised up to now. So they are heavily reliant on Ekitike, and all that's happened is he's getting doubled up, tripled up on, and it's very, very hard to score a goal when you're heavily reliant on your forward who's getting no service. So for me, I don't know if Wirtz is back. I'm just trying to check. If he's back, I think the probability for Liverpool goes up a lot more of winning the game. But without it, I'd be hesitant to say that they'd win the game. So I'm going 2-1 on the probability that he's back, but I'm not sure if he is.
Yeah, he got injured in the warm-up, didn't he? Which normally tends to be not too serious, but more of a precaution. Like I said, they were poor against Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest were the better team. It took obviously a very late winner for Liverpool, which obviously keeps them in the mix. But for me, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but Manchester United have absolutely gone past them, and are looking back at them in their shadows now. And I genuinely can't believe that that's a thing, but it absolutely is. And I'm seeing that being how the season finishes. I'm seeing Man United finishing above Liverpool. Which isn't even a controversial thing to say right now. I get that, but it just still feels massively weird to get your head around.
I'm going to change my prediction. Sorry, I've just seen that Slot was interviewed, and he says Frimpong's back, which I think is big for them. But Wirtz isn't going to make the game, so I've changed my prediction to 0-0.
Oh, you're pessimistic, Pete. I've gone 2-1 Liverpool. I think West Ham are difficult to break down, but they're also, West Ham aren't particularly free flowing in terms of going forward. If they score first, potentially will give Liverpool a bit of a bloody nose, but I do think at Anfield Liverpool will be too strong. And whether it's from free kicks, corners, long throws, whatever it might be, I think they'll have a little bit too much for West Ham and will get over the line. But many, many questions need answering at Liverpool if they're to kick on next season, including, of course, do they keep the manager? And my gut feeling would be that they don't in the summer, which again, of course, means that he might drop down the league somewhere else. Managers that have been discussed, both managers have been discussed in terms of what a great job they've done, but also bizarrely, should they be looking to be booted out, or obviously Newcastle United hosting Everton. Everton started the season really well, but have started to drift, and their home form is nowhere near what you would expect. Certainly if they were still at Goodison. Newcastle United are very hot and cold, aren't they, in terms of not just their results, but actually the football they play. You said a minute ago that it could be all 3 results. This could be all 3 results, couldn't it? It wouldn't surprise me if any of the 3 options happened here.
I agree entirely, and that's why I've gone for 1-1, because Newcastle in the Champions League are a bit of a different beast. I think Anthony Gordon came out and said teams don't generally sit behind the ball in the Champions League, and I do think that does suit Newcastle. They're able to press and get at them. But when teams do sit in, I do think they struggle to break them down. Their fitness and their physicality doesn't really come into play because they're not competing. They're just sitting in a low block. And I think that's what Everton will do and try and hit them on the break. So, yeah, I've gone 1-1. Wouldn't surprise me again if it was just one goal, whether it was like a Newcastle 1-0 win. So I can't see goals in this game.
Well, okay, yeah. So I've gone 2-1 Newcastle. I think Newcastle at home uh, feel like a slightly kind of. I realise that they've lost a couple of games at home, but again, I feel like Newcastle at home are a very different proposition to Newcastle away, and I think Everton are just getting clogged up a little bit in terms of what they're trying to do. Dewsbury Hall doesn't look like he's quite the attacking output that he had at the start of the season. The two centre forwards have went through a little bit of a goal scoring burst, but have kind of stopped. And I'm not sure where their goals are going to come from actually at the moment. Whereas at least Newcastle do still have some attacking outputs. They're just not firing particularly well. They have still got Visser, Voltemada, Gordon, Alanga. Harvey Barnes has been one of their best players of the season and must be in the mix for their player of the season. And they've got midfield goals as well. So for me, I do think that Newcastle will have a bit too much. But yeah, both teams probably starting to drift into a little bit of mid-table mediocrity, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So they've got to start picking up a few results to reignite their season, really, haven't they? Because if they don't, it is just going to peter out into a mid-table sort of finish, which Everton, I think, will probably take that first season in the new season. If they could finish around 9th, 10th, I think they'll probably take that. And that'd be a good season for them. But Newcastle, coming off the back of Champions League, to not even be competing for any form of Europe, I think from a PSR perspective and going forwards, that's going to really hurt them. So they have to start winning games and putting a couple back to back as well, or else it is just going to peter out for them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of teams like that, isn't there? Again, you probably go, well, let's go Leeds. Leeds to Brentford are in risk of that on end. Now, some of those teams, as you just said, will be very happy with that mid-table mediocrity and they'll be quite comfortable with that. Of course, the teams beneath Leeds will be looking to drag Brighton, Leeds and Crystal Palace into the mire. Nottingham Forest, Tottenham, West Ham will be looking to win some games while the others don't to claw them back in. And of course, Nottingham Forest play Brighton, which we'll come on to, which you could argue is an opportunity for them to claw certainly 3 of those points back. But the good news for us as neutrals is that there is still a relegation battle to be won and there is still a championship to be won. But there is going to be a bunch of games in the middle of this for the rest of the season that actually become just cannon fodder, really, aren't they?
Yeah, there's going to, in the next few weeks, there is going to be a lot of dead rubbers. I've found this season one of the hardest to predict, especially from a betting perspective. Generally there has been sort of the top teams just wiping the floor with the bottom, which I get that sort of happens. But there has been far less in the league. And I think it's because of the lack of quality, I must say. I don't think it's because the teams, sort of the quality's caught up. I think with the exceptions of Arsenal and Manchester City, you can even look at Manchester United pre-season. Chelsea haven't been that great. Like, there's not many games now where you go, oh, they're going to win. It is much of a muchness. And I think that's because of the lack of quality as opposed to the teams sort of catching up with quality.
Oh, the league is definitely lacking. We're certainly lacking superstars, right? If you go back through the annals of time, I can't think of a time where I've been less excited about watching a specific player. There's not one player that I would go and pay for. There's always been whether it was a Zola or a Giggs or an Asprilla or a Ginola or whoever it was. The list goes on and on and on. Even like the Joe Coles of this world and the Damien Duff and the Robins and the Drogba's. Just named Chelsea. Then you've got Thierry Henry, Pires, Lundberg. All those players that we've had over the years that just rolled off the tongue. Hazard. I don't even think about it.
There's 2 superstars in the league at the minute. One of them is Mo Salah, who's at the back end of his career and is fading, or faded, if you like, as well. And the other one is Haaland. However, Haaland isn't somebody who you would pay to go and watch in the sense of skills. He's a phenomenal goal scorer and is exactly what City need. But, like you mentioned, your Hazards and your Mahrez's and players like that, you look down that league and there isn't those superstars now, like you said before. I said, with the exception of those 2, and one of them's pretty much gone, and the other one is an out-and-out goal scorer. There isn't anyone now you look at and go, I'd love to go and watch him.
No, I completely agree. It's a shame. Even thinking about Manchester, we're going to talk about Leeds, Manchester United. You even think about the Leeds team that had, even going back in the day, Tony Yeboah was a player. Like, I know he was really hot and cold, but when he was hot, wow, like he was, scoring from anywhere. Like Mark Viduka, Harry Kewell, they had a team that kind of just felt like it was just full of superstars. And Man City, of course, Kevin De Bruyne, David Silva, like the list goes on, and even Yaya Toure, obviously for a while. All these players were just get you off the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
JJ Okocha even, even going back to like a Bolton had a world class player that would get you off your seat. Mate, I don't know if it's the systems or the people, but man, we're just lacking some superstars for me.
It's definitely systems, isn't it? I mean, a lot of the superstars you'll find now are at Real Madrid, but you can look at that and say they're not firing though, because they've probably got too many individuals over the system. So you need that balance. But you look at Man City, I think the one player you can highlight who had the potential a few seasons ago to be that player and almost put the league on his back was Phil Foden. But he seems to have dropped off a cliff. Like, he's not getting the opportunities and doing the things he was doing. So, like I said, there's a real lack and girth of superstars coming through. I think in world football as well, you look at a lot of the national teams. Italy are a shadow of the team that they used to be. Like, there's not that many good players who can, the Neymars of this world. He's probably the last one to come through. Do you know what? We've actually mentioned him. Who's the one player at the minute who you might go and put? Ryan is probably that player.
Well, he could be. Yeah, I need more consistency from him. But
Yeah.
you mentioned Real Madrid there. Not that anybody cares, and why would they? But for the first time in my adult life, I've cancelled my subscription to watch Spanish football. So when it was on Sky, I've had Sky, but I've had Premier Sport for however long it's been on there, and I've cancelled because even the Spanish football is not. Like I say, Real Madrid are not an attractive team to watch. In fact, now I tune in to watch the other team try and beat them rather than the other way around. They're in trouble. So for me, world football needs some superstars, and maybe we need to give them the freedom. Can you imagine a Ronaldinho playing in football now? Like, it just wouldn't happen because the system would kill him.
Well, what I was going to say to you on the back of sort of that Ryan comment is he does the one thing now that, apart from Jeremy Doku, nobody else does. He's just run at you. He's just direct. And that's just completely gone out the game. Like, now you'll see wingers who will keep the ball turned inside. So with the exception of Doku, and now Ryan, which is good to watch, there isn't that many people now that are willing to run at you and have a go.
Yeah, completely, mate. Okay, so we need to rattle through some now. We've got ourselves caught in a bit of a time trap, but we moved to Saturday evening at 5:30 kickoff. Leeds United host Manchester City. We've already touched on it in a couple of different conversations. Like you say, not easy, but for me, this is an away win. It's just a case of by how many. I think Manchester City is starting to find a little bit of form. Their towels are up. Obviously, going before Arsenal gives them the chance to close the gap, to put pressure back on Arsenal in that tough game on the 4:30 kickoff on Sunday again, like they did last week. So do you see that being similar, or do you see Leeds coming away with something?
I think it'll be a tough game, and I think Leeds will give as good as they've got probably for the first half, and then I think the quality will shine through. I've made Man City my banker of the week. I think they'll win 2-0 pretty comfortably, but Leeds will challenge them. But I just think, back end of the season, City come into their own. I think they'll just control possession probably, and just make the game look easy. But I think Leeds will give a good go. They'll try and hit them on the counter.
Yeah, I've actually, just before you said banker of the week, I'd highlighted them as my banker of the week. I agree. I've gone 3-1 to Manchester City, or 1-3 for those of you that are worried about being in the correct order. Nico O'Reilly is actually proving to be a little bit of a superstar in that slightly more advanced role. I think he has opened up some really interesting opportunities for Manchester City. I think they've got options off the bench. They're getting players back from injury. The two signings they made in January have made a real difference to them as well. You talked about Ryan as being one player for Bournemouth, but actually Gahe and Semenyo for Man City have made a real difference for where they are and kept them in the race. And so I think that, I think this will be a tough but easy game for Manchester City.
Just on the two signings, Semenyo's obviously hit the ground running, especially from like a fantasy perspective and everything. But I think Guehi's more of an important signing. I didn't quite realise as well how good and calm and composed on the ball he is. I knew he was a good defender, but what I've been seeing, chipping passes over the midfield into Haaland and the wingers. Like, I didn't realise how composed on the ball he is. So I mean, he's been a tremendous signing for me. I think he really complements the other centre half. I don't think a lot of the other centre halves are as good on the ball as he is. So I think he really complements them. It's a great signing. I think it's good for England as well. He's going to learn a lot there.
Yeah, all of that is absolutely right. And of course, the other side of that coin is Liverpool are going to regret not getting him over the line for a very long time.
Yeah.
That is an absolute fumble on their part. I get it's not always that simple, but once you didn't get him over the line on transfer deadline day, go back the next day, get the deal done for whether it be January or the end of the season. To let him go to the free trade in January, then Man City getting that injury. Again, let's not forget that Eze was signed for Spurs until Arsenal got the Havertz injury, which then they went for Eze. Like, you haven't got time to wait because stuff moves in football so quickly. 7 days, 7 hours is a long time. You've got to get the player over the line when you can. So they're going to regret that for a very long time. We move to Sunday, where Brighton and Hove Albion host Nottingham Forest in that alleged 6-pointer that I spoke about. It's not quite a 6-pointer, but certainly the swinging points is going to make it interesting. Brighton being at home, I think, does make this not quite as clear cut. I probably would have gone Nottingham Forest if it was at the City Ground. But where have you got for this? What have you
got? I don't like either side, if I'm being honest, as in from a entertainment perspective, or from actually thinking who was going to win from a quality perspective. I've gone 1-1, and that was a massive win for Brighton against Brentford, so they should have some confidence behind them. But Forest have got a new manager. That should give them a bit of a bounce, and it's obviously desperate times for them. So I've gone 1-1. I really couldn't plump for either side because I don't see where the quality to win the game for either of them is.
Well, the first one of the day, but I've gone for Brighton 1, Nottingham Forest 1. It's exactly where I've gone. Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think it's a difficult game to call. I think a draw doesn't really suit both teams, but probably could suit both teams as well, especially if West Ham have lost the day before to Liverpool, and another point clear would be different for Nottingham Forest in terms of adding some difference. So yeah, for me, this is a 1-1 draw, and probably not a huge amount to talk about in it. And again, I'm not sure I'm a fan of this kind of 3 games kicking off all being on telly, because I kind of feel like I try and watch them all but miss out everything as well. But I don't see my eyes being too much firmly on that game. However, the next 2 games probably will be a bit more interesting. We move to Craven Cottage, where Fulham host Tottenham Hotspur in what is desperate times and desperate measures for Spurs. Firstly, before we talk about what you think the game again, what did you think of the appointment of Igor Tudor for Tottenham in terms of a temporary measure, of course, because there's no one's saying he's going to get the job permanently. We all think that Pochettino's coming back in the summer.
What I like about it is it was done and dusted. Frank had gone and there was an appointment made within 2 or 3 days. Is that right? So it was very, very quick. When I look around the country and other teams, some teams have taken 4 weeks to appoint a manager, which is costing them. So I like that, he's come in. However, he's a very defensively minded manager. And I don't think Spurs have had that in a long while. So I don't know whether he's the right fit. But I think they've looked at their situation and thought we need to shore up the defence. This is what we need to do. We need to stop conceding goals, knowing that they've got some attacking talent that can probably score at the other end. So I don't think it's a bad appointment, if I'm being honest. I laid the blame on the players. Like I said, that video of Van der Ven, to me, I don't think you could hire any manager. If they're just down tools, you're not going to get anything out of them, are you? So I would be laying all the blame on the players at the minute, and I do feel for Igor Tudor. I think he's in a no-win situation.
The thing that Spurs have is that they could draw their way out of this problem. If they draw their next, they won't. Of course, you get my point. If they draw the next 11 games that they've got left, that gets them safe. So they don't need to win every game.
Yeah, I'm really pleased you said if they draw, because I've gone 2-2.
So I've gone Fulham, but so my point was around the fact that he is seen as a defensive. Just to be clear, I thought he got the defensive strategy completely arse about face against Arsenal. To put Dragusin up man to man against Gyökeres, was a complete mistake. Completely got manhandled, and that was where the game was lost. He had Dragusin on absolute pieces. When for me, you just a completely the wrong way of dealing with that problem. But obviously, most other teams won't have as much of the ball, and therefore it will give the defence. And they do have Danso and Porro back, but. Yeah. I think they're still a couple of weeks away from having some more of those attacking options in terms of Kudus, etc., coming back into the squad that they need. Although I did think it was interesting that Kolan Mawani looked like a football player for the first time, having his old manager and Igor Tudor back, and that could be enough if they can keep him fired up. That could be enough to score some goals. Because again, whether you thought it was a foul or not a foul, scored 2, scored 1 disallowed. He looked like he cared for the first time in a Spurs shirt. So maybe that was part of the thinking, because he has worked with some of the players before. But I've actually gone Fulham 2, Spurs 1, because Fulham for me are a well-run club. They're in a good spot, bit of a free hit. They like playing London teams. They always give Spurs and Arsenal a tough game. And with it being away from home, I see them having enough to beat Spurs. I've gone
2-2. I've gone to all. I saw enough in the game. Yeah, I know it was a battering, but there was in the Arsenal game, that is. There was enough there for me to be encouraged, though. Like I said, do you know, like Dragusin? For me, Dragusin was the best player on the pitch for the first 15, 20 minutes. Yeah, I thought he did really well. And then all of a sudden, he like, I agree, he got bullied, completely bullied then, and he was diving in. But for the first 15, 20 minutes, he was really aggressive and winning the ball. And I thought, I've never seen him play like this before. And then he did just start getting to, I think he needs to be a bit cuter with his aggression. They were just playing into his hands. But
Yeah,
I did see enough. Yeah. So, I mean, I've gone 2-2, and I do think this game is guaranteed goals.
Well, I think the Spurs fans would probably take that, to be honest, because I think the Spurs have been so boring for so long that to go back to that old kind of idea that we might lose 4-3, but it's going to be entertaining, would probably be enough to get Igor Tudor back on side. One more game at 2:00 on Sunday, Manchester United at home against Crystal Palace. I mean, I did put Man City as my banker, but I might do a double up of Man United as being part of that, because Man United are going to beat Crystal Palace. They're absolutely on fire. Their summer signings, by the way, when you look at, we just talked about Tottenham, who won the Europa League over Manchester United. Manchester United have gone out and signed them, Buemo, Cunha and Sesko, and all three of those are making an impact. This is a resurgent Man United team at home against Crystal Palace, who are out of form. For me, this is absolutely 3-1 Man United, done and done.
I've gone for 1-0 Man United. I agree with you. I think this will be a pretty comfortable, but I've gone 1-0 because I think the goals have just started to dry up a little bit. I don't know whether he's been trying to tweak the defence, and I think they've dried up, but I do think this will be a Manchester United win. I nearly had them as a bank, and then I saw they were 1-2, and I was like, no, not at that price, thank you. City, a far better price.
Yeah, but a nice little double might make it a bit more tasty. What they've got now is, for me, is obviously they've got a better, Michael Carrick's done the genius piece of playing players in their best position, so well done. But they've got that, they go again, like that Fergie time is back, isn't it? You look at the goal against West Ham in injury time, you look at the goal against Everton, it was in, after the 80th minute, it was in old money, that would have petered out to a 0-0. Whereas the goalkeeper would have thrown the ball in the back of net in the last minute. The goalkeeper did a great job of defending all those corners from Everton. Like, for me, they're a very, very different outfit now, and they can score in the first or the 91st minute. They're defensively much more sound. And I think this will, Crystal Palace obviously haven't played a Thursday night in the Conference League. Man United having a week off, for me, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, and somebody I want to give a bit of credit to in the United team, who never rarely gets credit, he only seems to get battered, is Harry Maguire. I think he's transformed that team at the back. When he doesn't play, I think they look so shaky. I don't think people realise that he's a good communicator as well. Like, he comes across as that joke, and he's a bit of a meme, doesn't he? But he is a good communicator as well. I think he's transformed that back line, because without him, I think they look shaky.
He does the basics very well, doesn't he? He's what I would call a meat and veg type of player. If there's a header to be won, he wins it. If there's a clearance to be made, he clears it. And he's not horrendous with the ball. He's better with the ball at his feet than people give him credit for as well. So, it would not surprise me in the slightest if our centre-back pairing going into the first game of the World Cup was Harry Maguire and Mark Gahey.
I'd be really happy with that, because sometimes you've got to defend set pieces as well, and there's nobody better in the Premier League than Harry Maguire.
I would rather him over Konza. Let's put it that way. Currently, for me, he's a better defender than Konza. We've not left much time for arguably the biggest game of the weekend, but again, that's what we do these days. We just waffle and hopefully get through the scores in time. Arsenal, as we've already said, host Chelsea 4:30 at the Emirates. Obviously, we've got fresh in our memory the Carabao Cup semi-final, where Arsenal really dominated, albeit with a little bit of closer than maybe it could have should have been. Can you make a case for Chelsea here?
No, I can't, if I'm being honest. I think that I've got the score for this. I've got it nailed down, and I'll probably stick a tenner on it as well. This will be Arsenal 1, Chelsea 0. They will do what they need to do to go and get the win. It's not going to be exciting, but I think they'll nullify Chelsea and nick a winner from somewhere, because that's what Arteta does. He will go back to his roots. Just gone and battered Spurs, but he will go back to his roots and try and make sure that they don't get beat. And I think it'll be 1-0.
Yeah, I don't know if Cole Palmer is injured or not. I know he's been kind of in and out, not maybe, but I think it depends for me, for Chelsea to have a chance, if he's fit, what they do with him in terms of where they play him and how they set the team up. And I'm hoping that they've learned from the last time they played. Now, it looks like Kukurea might well be out as well, so that's a big miss at left back. But it looks like Cole Palmer is available. So if he is, for me, they can hurt Arsenal. Other teams are now showing you how to attack to get some joy out of Arsenal. But like you, I think that Arsenal will get the job done. And I've gone for Arsenal 2, Chelsea 1, because Arsenal are currently conceding goals at a rate, if you remember, it wasn't that long ago when people were talking about could they beat Chelsea's, goals conceded record in the Premier League. Obviously, they're miles off that now, but for a while they were phenomenal defensively. But actually, I'm even thinking about removing some Arsenal players from my defensive strategy from a fantasy point of view because they do always concede a goal. So I've gone 2-1 Arsenal.
Yeah, no, they have been pretty poor at the back recently, haven't they?
Well, the goalkeeper hasn't helped. I know he's obviously been much revered because he has made some world-class saves, but he's also made some errors, of course, one of them leading to the Wolves equaliser just last week where he probably didn't need to do what he did. We move on to our £5 challenge. We've already both kind of alluded to the fact that Manchester City are our banker. I'm going to add Manchester United to mine as well just to bump it up a little bit. But for your £5 challenge, where have you gone, mate?
So my £5 challenge pays £32, and I've gone for Brentford, Man City, Man U, and Fulham versus Spurs, both teams to score.
Well, for a second, I thought that was going to be exactly the same as mine. I thought you was going to go with, so what I did was I've actually gone with Brentford, Man City, Man United and Arsenal. I thought you was going to go somewhere similar. So, that's my 4, which returns £31.48 currently. And my banker, if we put £10 on, returns £23.57 of the Manchester double.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout.
So, and yours would be what you're doing, 4 to 7. So you are looking at for £10 return, £15.71 for Manchester City to beat Leeds, which will no doubt,
which I think is great value. I think that is for a Manchester City team.
Can't disagree, mate. Always good to get somewhere near evens on Manchester City, isn't it? It's always a good shout. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, well, look, I think we've done it in not bad timing because we have less than 3 minutes left. So, as always, Fran, where can people reach out and touch us and find us and abuse us or, of course, congratulate us?
So to listen to the episode, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Just search for The Atmosphere is Electric. And social media-wise, we're on Twitter, X, Facebook and TikTok.
Amazing. Mate, good to have you back. Sorry about last week. Life just got in both of our way, I think, a little bit. So good to have you back. Hopefully we can get some of those right and we can start talking about some successes because it's been a tough season, as you alluded to. But have a great weekend of hopefully watching great football, mate. I look forward to speaking to you next week. Have a good one.
You too.